In this lesson, we will discuss key lifecycle management. There are many factors to consider in the lifecycle of a key, keeping in mind the types of keys, for example, public and private keys, and their corresponding usages such as authentication, authorization, signing, verification, and so on. There are many potential issues relating to how a key is properly generated, distributed, stored, replaced, deleted, and recovered during its lifetime, and provided with adequate protection against threats. Other questions come up as to how long the life cycle of a key should be, which could range anywhere from just a few minutes to 1 or more years, and the key strength needed to withstand attacks. And there are other questions like who shall take care of the generation, usage, replacement, and other phases of the life cycle. The most important aspect to consider is what the key is used for. One should always be careful not to use any key for different purposes. Here, an important distinction is made between data keys, used to encrypt data, and key encryption keys, KEKs, which are used to entirely protect other keys. Keys are fundamentally used for encryption, but encryption often acts as a very cunning proxy for other uses such as authentication and signing. For instance, you can prove who you are based on an ownership of a key. Once a key is generated, the key management system should control the sequence of states that a key progresses over its life cycle and allow an authorized administrator to handle them when necessary. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, provides strict guidelines for most aspects of the life cycle of cryptographic keys and has also defined some standards on how a crypto period is determined for each key. A crypto period is the operational life of a key and is determined by a number of factors based on the sensitivity of the data or keys to be protected, and how much data or how many keys are being protected. From this information, the operational life of the key can be determined, along with the key strength, which is proportional to the cryptographic strength of the system. The algorithm, and therefore the key type, is determined by the purpose of the key. For example, DSA is applicable to a signing purpose only, whereas RSA is appropriate for both signing and encryption. NIST specifies cryptographic algorithms that have withstood the test of time. There are instances when it is necessary for an authorized administrator to make changes to the key's parameters which cause a change in its state during a life cycle. Here's a list of some of those circumstances. Whether the key or associated data or encrypted key is suspected of compromise. Change in vendor support of product or need to replace product. Technological advances that make it possible to attack where it was previously infeasible. Change of ownership, where a change of keys is associated with a change in assignment of liability. Regulatory requirements, contractual requirements, or policy crypto period that mandates a maximum operational life. Let's look at the basic phases of a key life cycle. Do note, however, that every key management solution is different, so not all of them will use the same phases. Some are not used at all, and other phases can be added, such as pre-activation, activation, and post-activation. Generation. Keys can be generated through a key management system, hardware security module, or by a trusted third party, which should use a cryptographically secure true random number generator for seeds. The key, along with their attributes, will then be stored in a key storage database, which must be encrypted by a master key. Attributes include items like name, activation date, size, and instance. A key can be activated upon its creation or set to be activated automatically or manually at a later time. Each key should have a key strength, generally measured in number of bits, associated with it that can provide adequate protection for the entire useful time of the protected data, along with the ability to withstand attacks during this lifetime. The different key lengths will depend on the algorithm that it uses. A standard cryptographic algorithm is recommended that has been thoroughly evaluated and tested. The next phase is backup and storage. In order to receive a key that has been lost during its use, for example, due to equipment failure or forgotten passwords, a secure backup copy should be made available. Backup keys can be stored in a protected form on external media, for example, CDs, USB drives, or by using an existing traditional backup solution, for example, a local network. When a symmetric key or an asymmetric private key is being backed up, it must be encrypted before being stored. The next phase is distribution and loading. The objective of the deployment and loading phase is to install the new key into a secure cryptographic device, either manually or electronically. This is the most critical phase for key security and should only be performed by authorized personnel in case of manual installation. For manual distribution, which is by far the most common method of shared key distribution in the payment space, key encryption keys, KEKs, must be distributed and loaded in key shares to avoid the full key being viewed in the clear. Once the KEK is installed, data keys can then be shared securely since they can be encrypted, also known as wrapped, in this context. Best practice key management standards, such as PCI DSS, are now mandating that as well as encrypting the key material, the key usage needs to be equally secured, for instance by using a pin block encryption-decryption. While this is a very secure, well-known, and established method of key distribution, it is labor-intensive and it does not scale well. You would actually need a new KEK for every point that you share a key with. For larger scale key deployments, for example, managing keys for an entire secure web server farm, asymmetric key distribution techniques are really the only feasible way. In this case, the initial step of sharing a KEK using key shares is displaced by the simple technique of deploying a public key. Keys can then be transmitted securely as long as the public key, or its fingerprint, gets adequately authenticated. The next phase is normal use and replacement. The key management system should allow an activated key to be retrieved by authorized systems and users, for example, for encryption or decryption processes or MAC generation and verification. It should also seamlessly manage current and past instances of the encryption key. The key manager will replace a key automatically through a previously established schedule according to the key's expiration date or crypto period, or if it is suspected of compromise, which might be achieved manually by an authorized administrator. When replacing keys, the intent is to bring a replacement key into active use by the system and typically to also re-encrypt all stored data under the new key. But if the new key has to be used for new sessions such as TLS, then old data doesn't need to be secured by the new key. Replacing keys can be difficult because it necessitates additional procedures and protocols, which may include correspondence with third parties in public key systems. The timing for expiration depends on the strength of the key length, and how long the protected data or key will be valid. In common practice, keys expire and are replaced in a time frame shorter than the calculated lifespan of the key. As a key is replaced, the old key is not totally removed, but remains archived, so is retrievable under special circumstances, for example, settling disputes involving repudiation. The next step is archival. Archival refers to offline long-term storage for keys that are no longer in operation. These keys usually have data associated with them that may be needed for future reference, such as long-term storage of emails. There may also be associated data in other external systems. When archiving a key, it must be encrypted to add security. As recommended in the creation and deployment phases, it may be useful to encrypt a symmetric key with the public key of an asymmetric key pair so that the person or entity holding the corresponding private key can only decrypt it. Sometimes, depending on the key's deployment scenario, archival is the last phase in the life process and never moves on to deletion or destruction. An archived key cannot be used for cryptographic requests. Before a key is archived, it should be proven that no data is still being secured with that old key. The last phase is the end of the key's life cycle, where all of its instances, or just certain instances, are completely removed, and recovery of that key may be possible, depending on the method used. The end of life for a key should only occur after an adequately long archival phase, and after adequate analysis to ensure that loss of the key will not correspond to loss of data or other keys. There are three methods of removing a key from operation. The first one is key destruction. This method removes an instance of a key in one of the permissible key forms at a specific location. Information may still exist at the location from which the key may be feasibly reconstructed for subsequent use. The other method of removing a key from operation is key deletion. This method removes an instance of a key and also any information from which the key may be reconstructed from its operational storage use location. Instances of this key may continue to exist at other locations, for example, archival purposes. The third method of removing a key from operation is key termination. All instances and information of the key are completely removed from all locations, making it impossible to regenerate or reconstruct the key other than through a restore from a backup image. The key management system should be able to handle all of the transitions between phases of a life cycle and should be capable of monitoring and keeping track of these workflows. There are certain aspects to monitoring that should be considered. First, it is important to monitor for unauthorized administrative access to the system to ensure that unapproved key management operations are not performed. Next, the computer processor may be under significant load. When combined with an overloaded cryptographic service, the results could be serious, including data corruption or unavailability. Third, monitoring the key's lifecycle is also important to ensure that the key has been created and deployed properly.